I'm pretty sure it survived shipping. We're talking about the Lancool 207 today. An inexpensive case, actually, given the fact of the features that it has. We're gonna talk about it and kind of throw some parts in there and see how well it all works out. Because apparently it's an MATX size case that has ATX compatibility. So it really just makes it an ATX case. Hey, Jay. Jay. Jay.
What?
We got work to do.
Yeah, I'm playing World of Warships. Yeah. World of Warships is the free-to-play naval strategy game where you command the most iconic and famous warships from World War I and World War II, recreated with stunning detail and accuracy. Build your fleet while participating in various game types while upgrading your ship's arsenal along the way. New players who sign up using my link below will receive an exclusive starter pack to get you up and running quickly by receiving 7 days premium time, 1 million credits, 300 doubloons, and the Tier 5 premium ship, the Exeter.
So what are you guys waiting for? Start sinking ships with World of Warships by heading to the description below and getting your freebies. We've always been a fan of the Lancool series cases around here. We've used them in almost every, I don't want to say budget build, but like reasonably priced build. We'll get right to the TLDR. This thing is $79.99 for the black, $84.99 for the white. I think the white one looks really cool. I wish they'd sent it to us because it's a white case that has gray mesh. So like a white and gray look, which is kind of, I knew it was coming. I knew it was going to, because this kind of foam does that. This hard foam. Like with the plastic, man, it just turns into a freaking nightmare when it comes to static electricity. Anyway, the stuff that I heard flopping around in there, it's obviously gonna be a drive cage or something on the bottom, but nothing appears to be damaged. So Lancool 207 from Lee & Lee. Definitely a more reasonably priced product, as we just talked about. So it's gonna have some features on here though that to me are surprising to find at that price point, but considering we looked at the 216 and all that, which were also very popular cases, I'm not surprised that Lee & Lee is giving this sort of build quality, aesthetics, and feature set at this price point. It's the competition taking place at the sub $100 price is pretty intense. So everything is toolless. So we'll start with the top panel. This just pops right up. What is making that noise? We'll find it in a second. You can see it's a fine mesh, but not so fine that you can't feel airflow through it. It also doubles as the fan filter. So there's no additional filter in there. It's just, and I'm okay with that. That's a design philosophy I'm perfectly fine with on cases, because what I hate is when you do a fine mesh and then you throw a fan filter on it, not only are you filtering all of the dust, you're also filtering any air from getting through as well. So we get a pretty good airflow with these types of mesh panels. I think Steve even did a review of this already and basically found that the airflow in this is very, very good. So that's nice to see. The top panel, you get that one off by this little gap right here at the top. Not to be confused with The Gap, which is where all the cool kids shopped when I was in high school. Look, I was Walmart and Payless shoes, okay? And that probably shows in the way I continue to dress today. It's not Walmart, it's Amazon, okay? I'm a dad, I gotta rock the cargo and the dad shoes. Anyway, this is just magnetic on the top, and then it's got these little tabs that go on the bottom. So it's a real easy filter to clean. You just, there it is. So
Dang, infinity mirror fans at this price point?
These are 140 millimeter by 30 millimeter thick fan blades on the front for the 140 fans. So lots and lots of airflow, as you can see, obviously. The back is also toolless. So as you can see right here, no screws or anything to take out. Pops right off. Even has a little bitty breather hole right here, and we'll talk about why that's there in a second. So you can see so far, even though I have some tool, like my screwdriver out here, nothing has needed a tool. Just this tool to take it apart. Obviously a tempered glass side panel. Dang, it's weighty and heavy. I like that it's fully framed all the way around for support, so none of the corner of the glass can actually really impact the table unless you drop it just right. And then we have foam inserts on the side right here, will help with any sort of vibration or rattle. Not sure the thickness on this, looks to be about 3 millimeters thick. It's weighty, so that's nice to see. Check this out. So you can see we have two mid-plate fans right here. This is actually nice to see. The Lancool 216 was one of the earlier cases that featured side ventilation right here to bring in air from the bottom compartment. Because for the longest time, case manufacturers, they would put a fan or two down in the bottom to pull air in along with the power supply. But the fan is then so far away and getting such a limited supply of air by whatever the volume of air is when you calculate the surface area of the bottom by the height of the feet, it's kind of nice that they went, you know what, let's just put these vents on the side and let it pull in fresh air from the side. So you undo these screws. This is the first panel here that is not toolless. So it's got these 2 thumb screws on the back. So you can see now it's a full mesh side panel. So these mid-plate fans, which are designed to provide cooling direct to the GPU, are unobstructed by only having to come through the bottom. You'll also notice this is where those are zip tied in there. Wow, it's actually zip tied, not even twist tied, but a real zip tie in there. But you might be noticing something odd about this. The power supply is sideways in the front. And the reason why they did that is case manufacturers have started putting these mid-plate fans in here, or giving provisions for the fans. But then when you put a power supply right there, then the fan is getting, you know, a couple millimeters worth of gap between the power supply and the fan to pull air up or through, which is the same problem we have on the bottom of the case if you put bottom fans down there, and then it has to pull through the gap at the bottom. So it's kind of nice that they have moved the power supply to the front and shifted it sideways, and then they give you this extension cable to be able to plug in your power supply right here in the back like as normal. The only downside about this is when you have to turn on or off your power supply, you have to pop a side panel off to push the buttons. Now, this is what they mean when they say it's an MATX case with ATX support. So you'll notice the step up right here. Not to be confused with like the dance move or whatever it's called this. Anyway, so that means you can fit an ATX motherboard in here as long as it's a true ATX, not like slightly wider than ATX, but not quite ATX. That's not gonna fit because it's only giving you right to where the screw holes are. So we'll put a motherboard here in a minute to kind of show how it's nice, but motherboards these days sometimes do not conform to standard quote unquote ATX. So you're gonna want to check the measurements on that to make sure that they are supported between the widths right here. And we'll put them on the screen actually, what the actual width is that's supported right here. And then height-wise, you can see as soon as you put fans on the top as well as a like AIO or something like that, you're gonna start getting awfully close to your EPS plugs right here on the motherboard wall. So I'd and the top does not remove. As you can see, that's all just cut in or stamped into the top panel. So it's not like you can unscrew this, take it out, plug in your EPS and put it back. So order of operations on this case building would be put the power or the motherboard in, then put your EPS cables plugged into that, route them to the back if they're modular so that they're just hanging there, or have your power supply in already. And then run the cables. That way you can then put a 360 rad on top if you're gonna do an AIO or a 240 or whatever. If you're just putting fans, you'll have enough height. But if you're dealing with 25 mil fans and 30 mil radiator, 55 millimeters hanging down on this offset is gonna get in front of the motherboard, which will make it nearly impossible to plug in things like EPS, CPU power header, all that sort of stuff. So when chassis are trying to be as small as possible but fit standard size stuff, that's the kind of nuances you start to deal with. So I would even make sure you plug in anything along the top of the motherboard that needs to be plugged in. ARGB headers, fans, anything that needs to be plugged in up here, I would do that first. You can see right here, we also have a GPU sag support bracket. So that moves up and down. You can also undo the thumb screw, which is holding it, and move it either closer or farther away. That's nice because depending on the length of your GPU, you may or may not have it impacting a fan or something, so you can at least sort of adjust that position. And then you've got some anti-sag support built in for your graphics card right into the case that's native, so that's nice to see. So we'll talk about the power supply here arrangement for a second. If you recall in the past, we did a video about the Edge power supply from Lee & Lee. So that's this guy right here, or just sort of, it's actually more intended for like the 011 dynamic, but I want to see how well this works in here because with it facing the cables up like that, that'd be a perfect cable routing for this. So let me kind of get these cables out of the way here for a sec, but I'm really curious as to how well the Edge fits in this. Otherwise, if you're using a standard power supply, you can. You're just gonna be putting a bit of a bend on those cables. There we go. That's actually pretty clean. I like that. So then the cables that you're using can just come up and come this way. And if there's anything you need to sort of bundle out of the way, you can still bundle them here underneath the fans. They might show, but I think for the most part, because if you look right here, the downside is there's not a lot of room between here and the sidewall. Like you're not gonna fit any cables over here to hide. So they have to stay down in the lower section. Obviously a white power supply and white power supply cables would be very visible down here. That'd be a problem, but a black one would be just fine. And then you can see this one has the ventilation right here because to mount the shift in here, so to mount the Edge PSU in here, it would have to go fan facing up. So it can pull fresh air from here. So that's a little bit of a trade-off because if we were to flip that over, then it gives us no benefit to having the Edge power supply because then they're pointing down and that's not gonna work. Otherwise, Just using a standard length power supply, you would have enough cable length right here to be able to make your turns and sort of bundle them up and zip tie them nice and neatly out of the way. So there's that, the Edge power supply. Even though it was designed for their 011 lineup of cases or dual chamber cases, works pretty well in here right now. So some of the things they give you are extras of these. What is underneath the thing right now? Ah, there we go. They give you extra panels, these little snaps, which are like what hold the side panels and stuff in right here. So I love that they give you extra ones in case one breaks or something. So we get some zip ties, we get some Velcro straps, we get an additional rubber piece here for holding something down. I'm not sure, maybe just in case we need it. We get some rubber mounts for spinning drives. We get our spinning drive screws. These are case fan screws. They give you 4 of those plastic tabs. 2 of them are right there, 2 fell out. These are going to be pass-through fan screws with the right threading for this particular case. And then more hard drive screws. So where are the motherboard screws? Oh, motherboard screws are mixed in with these right here. Okay, let's go ahead and mount a motherboard in here so you can sort of see the amount of room you're working with here with a standard ATX. So this is a standard ATX wide motherboard. If you're wondering how you can tell, just look at where the screws are. So the screw hole is 1, 2, 3 on the right-hand side. If the board ends there, it's a standard ATX. If there is any additional, even like 5 millimeters past that, it is not quote unquote a standard ATX anymore. Also too, ATX refers to the length, not just the width. So an MATX would stop about here. It only goes a little bit past the second one. It stops about right there. And ITX is literally like just this square. But anyway, so you can see this standard size board is going to fit down in here just fine. But now you can see what I mean when I say if there's any additional width at all, we're gonna hit these, the cutout, if you will, for where the motherboard wall is. So that's why I wanted to show this and put the motherboard in there so you can see. And you can also see now what I mean about once you put, actually, you know what, looking at this, with that offset, you probably still could, with an AIO in here, be able to reach the 8-pin EPS if you forgot to plug it in. I still highly recommend just plugging those in, running them through the back now, like once your motherboard's down, and then dealing with your cooler and all that later. So in terms of graphics card length, it can Can you afford a 375 millimeter graphics card? Can you imagine if graphics card pricing was based on length? Actually, it kind of is, yeah, now that I think about it. 375 millimeters can be fit. So that's a really, that's really generous in terms of a chassis this size. Now that's making sure you don't have any front rads or anything on here, because there's 2 140 millimeter fans on here. You're not gonna very comfortably fit a radiator on the front of this thing. In fact, not gonna be necessarily front mount supported. I mean, you probably could maybe squeeze something here. The problem is the radiators are wider than the fans are typically, and the fans go right up to the metal, right up to the edge. And then you have to account for the fact that I can't line up the hole. Story of my freaking life.
Does that happen also?
Don't ask. I've had a lot of doctor's appointments lately, right? But the other thing you have to account for is the tank length on the bottom, because you have the end tanks on the rads. Not gonna work. So no real front rad support on this. They don't advertise that there is. I firmly believe with a Dremel you can make anything fit anywhere, but natively, not gonna be very good support. So nice, fresh 140 millimeter times 2 airflow on the front. Put a 360 or a 240 or whatever radiator on the top. So you're getting fresh air exhausting out there anyway. Let's talk about GPU support now, because that's the next part that we want to talk about. And I want to see how well this support bracket works on our iGame 4080 Super. As I was saying, the ginormousest GPU in the planet. Oh wow, that's actually pretty neat, like the support. So GPU sag is all in the manufacturing of the GPU. I've talked about this 100 times. I've showed some homebrewed methods to make your GPU stop sagging. It has everything to do with the fact that some GPU manufacturers don't tie the front IO plate into the cooler itself to triangulate and some strength right there. This one does, but you can see there's still a little wobble. Yeah, so that's what happened, is that little nub has to stay in the slot. But the length, the depth of this card, like the thickness of this card, is not allowing it to hook on the bottom and still stay within the groove. So unfortunately, the GPU support bracket does not work with this GPU very well. It's like that slot just needs to be like 3 millimeters longer. Also, this little cutout right here makes it super nice to be able to get your screwdriver in there without having to like go all weird and strip it. By the way, this is my work screwdriver from Amazon. And this is a separate piece that I got because length. And then this is a magnet that, one, I can just use it to magnetize, and when I'm bored, use your imagination. If you want to start using this screwdriver, I don't get any kickbacks or anything, it's just what I use. Link's down below on Amazon, and it's only like 35 bucks. And you get all this with it. Wow, when did this turn into a Works ad? You get all these bits and crap with it. And then it actually has a USB charger that's sitting over the charger right now. And this is a separate magnet, a second magnet I got for it. For me, this is like the perfect scenario, because let's say you're trying to screw something in, right? And you don't want to hold it. That magnet is really strong. Or let's say you even had some length available to you and that wasn't gonna be in the way. Dude, that's not. Now you have the GPU. This cutout right here is nice, not just for the power supply, which if you use the edge and the way it goes in would have to suck air through there. You might have some opposing airflow though, because this fan right here is pulling air through, because this is a flow through design. These two fans are getting direct fresh air from these two fans right here. And these are getting fresh air right from that vent that we showed you. Now, any cables that you stuff down in here might seem counterintuitive to like quote unquote blocking airflow, but I would like to reference a Linus Tech Tips video that Luke did about 8 years ago, where he literally took as many spare cable sets as he could find and shoved them in a case and did before and after temperature testing, and it did not affect anything even by like a degree. It's insane. Your brain tells you that can't be true, but it is true. But anyway, any cables that are zip tied and stuff out of the way, as long as they're not going. All right, so this is the extension cable I already talked about for the power supply. Fairly light gauge, so I wouldn't go, first of all, you can't put any power supply in here that's like 12, 13, 1500 watt that uses the different plug because of amps. You can't do that anyway because this won't plug into the power supply. So you're really limited to about 1,000 to some 1200 watt power supplies. Some have the fatter cable, some don't. Keep that in mind. I don't think anyone buying a $70 case is gonna probably buy a $500 power supply. The other thing too is we're gonna talk about included cables and such. So we get a single front power connector. I love this so much. No more guesswork as to where it goes. USB 3, because you have two USB 3 ports on top. Our USB-C, you get one of those on the top. And then we have our fan header, as well as our ARGB header, because both of these fans are wired together. So that's nice. You get an ARGB plug and a fan header, and you only have one of them because, like I said, they're wired up as a pair. So that's nice. One header for both. And then the storage we can talk about here. Oh, and then obviously we have these cable grommets. You can run cables behind them, or as they did, through the zip tie to sort of tie stuff down right there. And then we do have a grommet right here, which is a very interesting location, but that's if you need to bring any cables down from the top to your GPU for some reason. So you can come up through the bottom, or like right here, but this is really designed for the power, the graphics card power right there. Because if you look, there's not really, unless you're gonna come right there, which is gonna be occupied by your USB 3.0, USB-C right there, 24 pin, right? This is more ideal to just make your run straight to your graphics card. So that run might bother a lot of people. I think we're used to seeing cables down on the bottom. Now to be fair though, they do also give us this one right here. So if you're one of those people that bothers you, you could run your power supply, or your power cables from your power supply to your GPU up through the bottom, and that might be more aesthetically pleasing for most people. So you have both options. Now the documentation for this actually says two different things when it comes to GPU length. One says 375, which we already said, and one says 410. I'm inclined to believe the 410. So we're gonna measure it. I pulled out my metric measuring tape because apparently I have the most American measuring tape ever that doesn't even have centimeters or millimeters on it, but has every fraction known to man. So here we go. That is measuring 422 millimeters from the inside to the outside, or like the lip right here. So 410 millimeter length, because obviously it's minus the hold down depth that cuts into it right there, and the fans that protrude a little bit. 410 definitely is the correct thing. So Lian Li might want to update the review guide for this. Anyway, moving on. So on the back right here, we actually have very little storage for this. I think Lian Li is really kind of banking on many people now going the route of NVMe, but obviously that leaves out a huge group of buyers who are shopping in a more budget-minded sense, which is what this case is more oriented towards. Granted, $80 is not, but it's not cheap, but it's also not expensive. It's like the perfect sweet spot, in my opinion, of someone that doesn't want to spend a lot on a case but wants good features. So you do have these two sleds. This is what the case screws are mounted to. So you can mount 2.5-inch drives or 3.5-inch drives on there. 2 of them, and that's it. That's all you get to mount in this. So I highly recommend NVMe storage as much as possible when it comes to, or the largest drives possible that you can fit on these, like 2 terabyte maybe for SATA SSD if you're going that route, or 2 terabyte for NVMEs, because these 2 is all you get. Now, nothing says you can't come up with your own way of maybe like stacking or making like a hamburger of drives, right? Or whatever. Maybe finding a universal drive cage, put the SSDs on there and then mount that down to this, and then that'll work. So I just want to point that out. Otherwise, if you're like me and I don't use any sort of SATA drives anymore, I would remove them entirely. That way it's just a cleaner look on the bottom, and then I have more area to be able to like store my cables that aren't being used, or extra cable. See, even though I may not use all my SATA cables and stuff, some devices do use SATA. And I get tired of trying to go and find a cable to plug it in later, so I'll leave at least one SATA cable plugged in and kind of coiled up into the side that's not being used. So I would have, like if there was a SATA device here, say for a hub controller or something like that, I would have the one plugged in and then I'd have another one coiled up. That way I'm not trying to deal with it later or trying to find it if I lost it. So there you go, that's our first look at the Lancool Lancool 207. Pretty impressive. To me, it's funny, it's a lesser number than the 216, but to me it feels more refined than the 216. And at that $80 price point, $79.99 for black, $84.99 for white, they have to make up some of the cost for white because white sells like 5% of the market, and it costs them more to make white because they order less at a time, so they don't get that like order quantity discounts as much with white. It costs $5 more. I think y'all can go get one mocha frou-frou frappa latte less to afford it, and you're fine. I think everyone watching this video can name some way they wasted $5 this week, okay? Don't make me do that, because I waste $5 every minute, it feels like. All right.
On the frou-frou latte.
Yeah, shut up, Phil. Frickin' throw me under the bus. No, what are you talking about? That's oat milk. What are you talking about? All right. Anyway, thanks for watching. If you want to help support my mocha frou-frou lattes, go to Amazon and buy the screwdriver or mat or some like that. All right, guys. Thanks for watching. And as always, we'll see you in the next one.